Are we on? Is this real? Is this happening right now?
Happening,
I feel
it's happening.
all right. And just drop in that link on the chat here, Richard, as we get going. The Chicago Bears have hired Matt Eberflus,
Yep.
Hill.
Eberflus.
We're going with Eberflus. All right. Listen, this is the end result. All right. I have listened to Bears fans freak out for at least 2 years, maybe more, about the Bears need to fire Matt Nagy. The Bears need to fire Ryan Pace. The Bears are absolutely, positively in complete and utter need of a new regime. And I never disagreed. By the way, putting the YouTube of this in the chat right now, or on Twitter right now. So let's get rolling. But Hill, I think the question right now is, did they upgrade? And no one knows, but does it feel like an upgrade?
It doesn't.
No. It doesn't to you.
It doesn't. It feels like more of the same. Look, but that's the hard part about these coaching decisions. It's unless you hire like the ghost of John Madden, what are you going to get excited about? We don't know what this guy can do as head coach. We don't know what the head coach general manager combination is going to be. And that's the other part of this too. So you hire a new general manager, a couple of days ago? There's absolutely no way that he's gone through an entire head coaching search and settled on his guy here with Eberflus. This is Ted Phillips. This is George McCaskey pulling the puppet strings like they always have. That's why it feels like more of the same.
Wait, okay, hold on a second. You really think that this was, hey, we want you to hire Matt Eberflus? That is painful if you think that's right. I don't think that is right. I do think that, but it is interesting, and to argue against myself, look, these were the guys that we interviewed. These are the candidates. He didn't bring in anybody else, right? Hired. Look, Ryan Poles has been here for all of 5 seconds, literally 5 seconds, and he did not want to take his time. There's a ton of jobs out there. I don't know if that was the main panic here. Like, we got to get our guy in now, but this is not, and you're also not hiring, for the record, an offensive guy. So, which is fine. And I guess if you get a great offensive coordinator, Hill, I would love to hear some candidates from you. Who would the offensive coordinator be? But what you've done here is you've done exactly the same thing that you did 4 years ago, sort of. Because when Pace came in, he was a first-time GM coming from the same organization, moved his way up through the ranks, and then the Bears deemed him the hot guy. Let's go, Ryan Pace. And they were so damn excited when they went to the playoffs and went 12-4, and Pace was executive of the year and Nagy was coach of the year. Forget about the whole John Fox era. We'll just wipe that clean. All right. But Matt Nagy had never been a head coach. Ryan Pace had never been a GM. Ryan Poles, 36 years old, sweet resume, moving up through the Chiefs organization. I'm working for Scott Pioli at the start. I'm working for John Dorsey. I'm working for Brett Veach, and I'm gaining cachet around the NFL. This is a hot young guy who's getting a lot of interviews. You know, the Giants interviewed him. He was supposed to go to the Vikings. This is not like some completely out of the blue that's not being considered, and the Bears plucked him. It wouldn't be like the Texans hiring Josh McCown, which would be a great hire, side note. But so they were in with where other NFL teams were if you're looking for comfort on that. However, it's still a first-time GM hiring a first-time head coach. You're the Chicago.
This was one of the more attractive jobs on the market. You've got Justin Fields, which let's just kind of chalk up that first season to nobody knew what they were doing. And he still has that stock of being a first-round quarterback. He also has a lot of the tools, going back to what he shot at Ohio State, that could translate, if developed, into something special in the NFL. So that right there is an attractive element to this Bears job. There's also the Bears prestige. Like, you're coaching the Chicago Bears, one of the most iconic franchises in football history, following in the footsteps of all the greats that have come with the lore of the Bears, the monsters of the Midway. And you should be able to attract big names to this job. You should also be able to have people in position to not screw the brand up, which has been the case for as long as I've been alive. I've only been alive since 1992, Carm, but the Bears have been good basically 1 year in my entire life, and they had Rex Grossman as their quarterback. So, and that's an anomaly. That should not happen. You go to the Super, you're the Bears. You have all of this clout. You play in one of the biggest, most awesome cities in the country. You have this brand that is NFL football legacy, and your only Super Bowl trip outside of the vaunted 85 Bears is Rex Grossman. That right there tells me that we've got a leadership problem. And that's not a new, input here, because Ted Phillips has been the problem since 1999, whenever he came in here, because just look at what he's doing. He hasn't been doing anything. So no, I'm not optimistic about how this is going to go.
Let me bring in Kevin Powell, who covers the Bears, WGN Radio. There he is. Josh Hill, managing editor, superstar, fan-sided, knows more about the NFL than anyone. KP, you two have never met. Welcome. Zach Best is in the chat. Carm, how am I doing? I'm fine. I'm fine. But KP, what I'm making the point here is that the Bears have done the exact same thing. And maybe they'll get it right this time. Maybe they'll get it right. But we have a first-time GM and we have a first-time head coach. And if somebody had said, hey, KP, hey, Kevin, the Bears are going to fire Pace and Nagy, and then 3 weeks later, whatever the hell it's been, it feels like 3 weeks, they're going to have Ryan Poles, who was younger than Ryan Pace, and they're going to have Matt Eberflus. You feel free to correct me on the pronunciation here. And that, and I think you're on mute. And that's the hire. That's what they've done. First-time head coach, first-time GM. What's your reaction? Can't hear KP. Don't know why. First technical difficulties into DeWindy. Don't know if we'll be able to fix it. Fingers crossed that we can. I got, let's see, might need to set up Mike on restream. We're going to work on that. We'll work on Kevin's reaction. Sean Daly is saying it's not the splashiest hire, not always a bad thing. Look, it's not it. What would have been a splashy hire for you? Because Bears fans hate, but Bears
Jim Caldwell would have been the splashy hire. I don't care if Bears fans don't like Jim Caldwell. If Jim Caldwell takes the Bears to the Super Bowl and wins one, he's going to get a statue. Like, come on. Jim Caldwell is also a guy who, 2-time Super Bowl winner. He coached Peyton Manning to Super Bowls and MVPs. He took Joe Flacco, who at the time we were having, a laugh and jokes about how is Joe Flacco elite, takes him to the Super Bowl, wins the MVP there. And he has no losing seasons with the Lions, the Detroit Lions. You know how hard it is to win with the Detroit Lions. So, look, Caldwell, I loved Caldwell as the option because he's also somebody who comes in and completely changes the culture in Chicago. Brian Flores would have done the same thing too. You bring in Brian Flores, he seems to have that we're not going to take any crap attitude, which is very Chicago. It's very Monsters of the Midway, and it seems to embody everything that we romanticize about the NFC North. And you've put that in Chicago, and that's your attitude, and that's your identity. You instantly change everything, the perception of the team, all of that, and then everybody's feeding into it. So there are a number of splashy options. There are a number of better options, I think. Again, we don't know if Eberflus is going to be good, if he's going to be bad. To be fair to the guy, he's the defensive coordinator of the Colts. The Colts had a nice little run under him. The defense wasn't terrible. Everybody's going to dunk on the Jaguars game at the end of the season. I think that's tremendously unfair and reductive. He was good when he was with the Cowboys. And this is a guy who a couple of years ago, we were talking about him as almost like this coaching guru who was really hot on a lot of coaching lists. It just feels like the Bears may be a couple of years too late on that. So he's not the worst hire in the world. No. Okay. He's not the best option, I think, that was out there. And now we have to see, and you're not starting off on the best foot. That's the other thing.
So, okay. The other side of the coin that I was hearing was that Dan Quinn was going to be the guy. All right.
Okay.
And by the way, I love your coffee mug on the mark. Those are available at Fansided Swag. Go get them. Outstanding brand. So, and he's announcing that he's staying with Dallas. I'm going to remain the defensive coordinator. Now, is he turning down the Bears to be the defensive coordinator in Dallas? I would find that hard to believe. You have a first-time general manager giving you a seasoned head coach, albeit seasoned in a way that you lost one of the worst Super Bowls of all time, but still got there. Let's not completely boil down his entire career to losing to the Patriots and Tom Brady. Lots of people lost tough games to Tom Brady. You're going to have a lot of leeway. There's not going to be a huge pressure on you to win immediately. You have Justin Fields coming into his second year, yet you're deciding to stay in Dallas. Does that make it? I'm trying to understand the rationale, or because if it's against the Bears, that's a huge. I don't believe in anything that's going on there. Ryan Poles, I don't know who the hell you are. I'm not coming into that situation.
Well, he was also in talks to be the Broncos head coach too. He was taking interviews there. Like, he's a hot name on the coaching circuit. I think this is total speculation. We're going, deep state conspiracy theory. I think that he sees the situation with McCarthy, and he's going to wait that out and maybe see if he can become the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So also, he's a guy who I don't think he's going to cash in all of his chips after one good hot season. Like, the challenge now is to repeat what he was doing in Dallas defensively in a year, back-to-back defensive years of prominence is very hard to come up with, but I think he's going to maybe wait out McCarthy and see what goes there.
One more chance at Kevin Powell here. KP, are you there? Speak
Carm,
to me.
You got me yet?
Yes.
Josh Carm, good to be with you. A new era of Chicago Bears football.
Way to battle. Good job. Like it. And hey, Fansided team, maybe hit up Patrick Schmidt because I see him putting out links. See if he wants to jump on here. He's a diehard Bear fan. KP, what's your reaction to this?
Well, look, I realize that to me, it's always come down to, in many ways, Justin Fields. And as much as people wanted an offensive coordinator to run things, I think that the process, when you were hiring, whether it was a general manager or a head coach, part of that process should have very much been about Justin Fields. How do you feel about Justin Fields? Do you think you can grow with him? What does he need to make Justin Fields the quarterback we think he can be in the NFL, which is a potential franchise quarterback? So as much as you might have wanted to bring in an offensive-minded coach, as you've mentioned, Carm, the whole first-year coach thing didn't work with Matt Nagy. He was supposed to be the offensive guru, right? But what was one of the downfalls of Matt Nagy? In-game management. And, I mean, how embarrassing was that for him where he had to relinquish play calling duties towards the end of his tenure here in Chicago? Why? Because he couldn't manage in-game management wasn't there from Matt Nagy. It wasn't. When he had to call plays, when he had to look at certain situations and process that and make the right decision, he failed at that. Like he was really bad with fourth down, with timeouts, challenges, things like that. That never worked for Matt Nagy. Those having both of those duties, being a head coach and being an offensive coordinator. So I still think it all comes down to building around Justin Fields. I hope Ryan Poles believes in Justin Fields. I hope he has ideas on how to help Justin Fields, offensive line, receiver. On the defensive side of the ball, obviously the secondary is going to need a lot of help. So it's so tough. I mean, look, we all want reactions, right? Everybody wants to know, is this good or bad hire? We're not going to know for a while. Do I hate the hire? Do I love the hire? I feel fine with it. Everything I've read about Eberflus, although this time of year, you never read anything bad about any candidates, do you? Do you rarely hear anything bad about candidates? Gosh, I know you mentioned Jim Caldwell. I wouldn't have thought that'd be overly splashy. I mean, look, I think now it's what sort of staff can Matt Eberflus build around him. So as much as that, yes, of course you want to hire the right guy as the head coach, but who does he know around the league? He's been around for a while. Now it comes down to, as many have pointed out, offensive coordinator, finding somebody that will work well with Justin Fields. That's the important part to me. Do I love the hires? Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say you love a hire. I mean, Ryan Poles seems to check all the boxes. But yeah, Carm, to your initial point, like, you're talking about first year GM, first year head coach. Of course, we're immediately going to have flashbacks to the last regime, right? So I'd say let it play out. But I do think that, the big step here is just because Matt Eberflus isn't an offensive guy that's not necessarily a problem because the last guy was an offensive guy and it was a complete disaster. So now it's about building that staff and building around Justin Fields because Carm, you know how high I am on QB1. So.
Yeah, and for sure. Look, hey, Josh Hill, who are the most successful coaches in the NFL right now? What does that look like? Here, let me give Eberflus, before you answer, let me give us a little bit of the bio for those who are like, who the hell is this guy? He was third in the 2018, KP, you're going to love this one, in the NFL Assistant Coach of the Year voting. Outstanding move, number 3 in the Assistant Coach voting 2018. Of course, with the Colts defense, led the AFC in takeaways last year, 33 of them. He was they finished in the top 10 in the league in points allowed, 21.5. All right. Before the Colts, where was he? He was with Dallas, 6 years coaching the linebackers with the Cowboys, 2-year stint with the Browns doing the same thing, 17 years of college coaching, Toledo, love him. Anybody got a nickname on Toledo on the YouTube here? I believe Mudhens, or I think that's baseball. Golden Flashes? No, that's Kent State.
No, it's the Toledo
Storm. Anybody?
No.
I'll drop it.
I'll look it up, Carm.
Please look that one up. Missouri from 01 to 08. Tribune is writing that players laud Eberflus for his communication skills and leadership style. He is known as a detail-oriented coach with a knack for connecting with players and fellow coaches. I like details. Eberflus has earned a reputation for being able to blend his strategic insight with the personnel he has to work with. That is something that Matt Nagy failed horrendously at. So that, if that is true, that is a huge upgrade. Loading his defense with only as much as players can handle. So that's another thing. Like, it was the Bears. Here you go, Justin Fields. Here's the entire game plan that we have. Go get him against the Cleveland Browns. Worst performance in Bears history as a quarterback, which is saying something when you have Bob Avellini and everybody else in the history of the Bears. 1 damn yard. They did not set him up for success. So what we're hearing here is that this guy is good at putting players in position to win, which I think is job one for any coach. My point in the rewinding back to the original question, hot young coaches in the game right now, they're kind of offensive minded. The Bears are doing it a little bit differently. But what I do like about this on one level is they're taking a big swing. You're not trying to be, 11-6 guy and make the playoffs. So we're going for the hot young dude who hopefully is going to be the next big thing, and we're going for and he's not that young, although I'd like to say he's young because he's right around where I'm at. But we're going for the 50-year-old Eberflus who's never gotten a chance to do it. So it's a home run swing. They're not trying to hit a single here.
No. Well, you asked the question, what does a good head coach look like in the NFL right now, or a successful NFL coach? Outside of being somebody like Belichick, I would say look at Sean McVay. What does Sean McVay do? He builds his staff, and it's more than just the offensive coordinator. You look at all the guys that have been hired off of his tree, it goes down, and all the guys that have been with him for years. So something that you mentioned about Eberflus was he's been around. He knows a lot of people. He's secured a lot of trust with a lot of people who are probably going to come in and help him now that he's in a position to lead a team. And I would even look at the Chargers maybe as a 1-to-1 or as close to a 1-to-1 comparison with the Bears, because they hire Staley, who's a defensive guy. He gets Joe Lombardi to come in and be the offensive coordinator. And Justin Herbert, we're talking about him. Sometimes there's weeks where we're like, this guy's better than Patrick Mahomes, which is never the correct take. But he's playing that well that people are having that conversation. And that's kind of a similar situation. Defensive head coach comes in, has a hot young quarterback off of a good rookie season, and he's able to kind of build something. And he's using that McVay style of, it's not just me. It's not just me and the play caller. It's the entire building. Bruce Arians has done the same thing in Tampa Bay. He's taken guys that's somebody who's also been around for years and years and years, knows a lot of people. And when it comes time for him to call in some favors to get the right people to do the jobs that he needs to get done, he knows them. And then he gets it done. And I mean, they have Tom Brady, but they won a Super Bowl. And that staff is a big reason why. So, I mean, that's reason for optimism here with your guy here.
KP, do you think the Bears, is this a Ryan Poles hire?
It sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like, the Bears, vetted these guys. And I'm sure when Ryan Poles was interviewing, he probably talked to the committee of 5 and asked, who have you talked to, right? Wouldn't you think if you were Ryan Poles, said, hey, who have you talked to so far? And then kind of get the wheels moving on that. I'm curious as to how good does Ryan Poles, I'm kind of getting ahead. I know we're dissecting, sorting this out, the hires, but like how good does Ryan Poles think he can make this team be? I guess what I'm thinking is like, what's the window for Ryan Poles here? Like, does he think he can turn this roster into something competitive? Which there was talent. There's some major glaring holes, but does he think Justin Fields can make that big year 2 jump? Because then I think, like, I'm just curious, like how much does Ryan Poles believe in the core of this team, whatever core they have, and how aggressive is he this offseason? Is it more about sorting out the cap and some other things this offseason, or do they think they can build around Justin Fields this offseason and find ways to upgrade the offensive line? I will say that it does sound like he's a really great talent evaluator when it comes to the offensive line position. Obviously played it at Boston College, but what I read about that, he seems to have a really good eye for offensive linemen, which is encouraging, obviously. So I'm curious, like, how aggressive is he going to be this offseason? Does he think he can make? And if Aaron Rodgers isn't back next year, the NFC North is kind of wide open, right? So how much do they factor that in when it does come to offseason decision making?
So that's an interesting point. Like, is Ryan Poles taking this job because, oh my God, you're giving me the general manager job of the Chicago Bears? I'm 36 years old. I'm not turning this down, even if I don't like the roster, and not just get super excited and like, you know what, I'm not going to kick the can down the road here and wait for something better. I'm taking what's right in front of me. Or did he look at the Bears and say, this is sweet. I've got Justin Fields, who was used terribly. I hated what they were doing with him. They did not put him in a position to succeed. I've got Roquan Smith, who I think there's a next level there, who can be an outstanding linebacker in the league. I have a young Darnell Mooney. I've got a young David Montgomery. I've got some young guys on the offensive line. I really like their pick of Larry Borum last year. That would have been sweet. Tevin Jenkins is interesting. So now I got a left tackle and a right tackle who are going to help me be able to build a roster because I'm not spending a lot on my offensive line. I'm assuming that he probably looked at it that way because if he hated the Bears gig, he had a flight to Minnesota the next day. He didn't take the flight to Minnesota. Now, maybe he looked at Minnesota. It's like, the last thing I want to deal is whatever the Kirk Cousins situation is going to be. But, I mean, he shouldn't have been in a huge rush, right? This guy was moving up. He had to have liked the Bears job to take it, right? That logically.
Well, to Josh mentioned earlier, and I completely agree. I felt, and I know not everyone believed it. I thought the Bears job was a very attractive one. For a head coach, and I think for a general manager too. And look, as much as locally as we make fun of the Bears, and rightfully so, because they're typically always bad, and there's, it's easy to poke fun at the Bears. I still think there is that it's the Chicago Bears. Like, I really do believe that from what you hear. Like, I can't believe I get to be with the Chicago Bears. That still means something, I think, to the NFL world, despite their failures on the field. But I always thought it was a very attractive spot. And a lot of that has to do with the quarterback. And almost maybe that's my entire reasoning is because of Justin Fields. I mean, this is a potential franchise quarterback here. So I think if you look at that as your head coach, like, I get to build around Justin Fields, and same goes for the general manager.
Let's bring in radio legend. He's been covering the Bears since they left. I don't know. Did you ever cover a game at Wrigley Field, David Schuster? Long time Chicago.
Bronco Nagurski, I know him well.
my legend, Schuth, I appreciate you taking time. David Schuster with us here as the Bears have hired Matt Eberflus. Shu, your reaction. Is this a good hire? Have the Bears done this right? First-time GM, first-time head coach. You look already irritated.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just got off the treadmill, so forgive me if I'm all sweaty here.
You look great.
This is deja vu. I hate to throw cold water on this, but they hired a junior executive just like they did with Ryan Pace. He's never done this before. You get your fingers crossed. And they hire a head coach who's never been a head coach anywhere before. So forgive me. The jury, of course, is out. I'll give them, a chance. And would he take the job of the general manager of the Chicago Bears? He'd be a blanking idiot if he didn't, of course. I mean, he's 36 years old. He gets a chance to be the general manager. There's going to be little pressure on him. I mean, this roster is not going to be very good for the next couple of years. There's pieces, of course, but they don't have a first-round draft pick. There's not going to be pressure on him for a couple of years here, to be honest with you. I wish him well. I wish them all well. I'm going to be honest with you. I think they hired both these guys, Matt and Ryan, deja vu all over again, because they already had the Matt and Ryan table settings in the kitchen area. And so they didn't want to change those. So now they just got Matt and Ryan all over again. How about that?
I'm gonna out myself. I didn't even put the Matt in because I'm so focused on the last name that we went Matt and Ryan again.
Yeah.
I mean, my God. And by the way, this is a brand new channel, DeWindy City on YouTube. We've been doing the audio version for a while here, but please hit that subscribe. We'll be doing a ton of content, a ton of Bears content, and we'll sprinkle in what's going on, of course, around the Chicago landscape as well. We love the Cubs, Sox, Bulls, Blackhawks, all that too. But the Bears is going to be a huge driver of the channel here. Listen, let me give you this part then, which I threw out to KP and Josh. They're not trying to be in the middle here. They're swinging for the home run. What about that part of it? Like, we're going big here.
How are they swinging for the home run if they hire a guy who's never been a general manager or never been a head coach? How's that hitting a home run?
They're betting on the upside, Shu. Come on.
Okay, well, they did the same thing 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So, again, to me, this is deja vu all over again. Knock on wood. Good luck to them. I hope they succeed. Don't have a first-round draft pick. Don't know what they're going to do to improve this quarterback. I don't know if he's the real deal or not. Nobody in this panel here does. Nobody knows. So, knock on wood, things go their way, but this is not swinging for the fence. If they were swinging for the fence, they would have hired somebody who's done this before in both jobs.
Who would have been your GM hire, Hill, along those lines? If you were, I
don't know.
Rick Smith?
Honestly, I don't have a good answer for that, and usually I have a funny, stupid answer, but in this time, I don't even have that because I'm not really locked in. Just somebody who's much like, this is how I look at it. The Cubs, when they wanted to finally win, they went out and they got Theo Epstein, who won previous, okay? The Bulls, they went out and they got somebody who has won previous, at least, Billy Donovan, he's won a couple of championships in college, successful on the pro level also. The Bears, deja vu again. They're hiring two guys. Again, I pray that they work for them. However, it's a crapshoot here. That's really all it is.
By the It is, and Josh Hill's out here saying hire Jim Caldwell, and I don't know who. Did you have a GM in mind too? I cannot.
No.
I'm having a hard time going negative right now, and I know KP doesn't want to do it either. Like,
I always do.
I mean, it would just suck if they like. Come on, we've waited for 7 years, not 7, but we've been waiting for 3 years for Pace to be gone. And 2 years for Nagy to be gone. I also would like to make a mention, by the way, that Matt Nagy has the third most wins of any Bears coach in the history of the Bears in his first 4 years as a Bears head coach. So it's absolutely at least on the table that Matt Eberflus is not as good as Matt Nagy. He'll have at least he'll seriously have a hard time duplicating the record in the first 4 years.
Guys, all I'm going to say is this: go back and take a look at what the tea leaves were on both Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy from 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, whatever it is, and then compare it to what the tea leaves are on these two guys. It's carbon copy. It is. Knock on wood, these two guys will do a much better job than those two guys because they were awful. So hopefully these guys do it. But I'm not going to go gaga on either one of these guys. Did you know either one of these guys before 5 days ago? Come on, be serious.
When I first heard the name Matt Eberflus, I thought it was a joke. That can't be real. We're not going Eberflus.
the made up Harry Potter name. That's what I've heard. He's a made up Harry Potter character. But to the point about whether or not there was a GM candidate, the problem is, and to the point that David made, it's the decision makers who are already in charge in the Bears. It's Ted Phillips. It's McCaskey. These are the guys who are calling the shots. And look at the track record. It doesn't matter what they're selling you. It feels like fool's gold at this point. Like if I'm a Bears fan, it's like I'm not excited about any of this because of what I've watched for the last decade plus. Nothing has gone right. None of the decisions have been good. And it's like, oh, these guys are now all of a sudden trusted for no reason at all to have made the good decision. Maybe they did. But there's the track record. It's not there. And that's the problem. It's the people making the decisions, not the hire itself.
Hey, KP, talk to Bears fans out there right now. Give just give some love to the guy in the South lot who's listening to Schuster's like, I can't do this again. At least you're on. I think you're on the mute right now. At least they got the order of operations correct, right? We did that right. We did hire the GM first. Can we go there? I mean, I don't know. I would have just focused on the GM, by the way, and I wouldn't have interviewed one damn head coach. I would have just gotten. I would have just gotten the GM in order and let him do whatever the hell he wants to do.
Well, yeah, for sure. But it seems like Ryan Poles was the one who made the final hire here. To Schuster's point, like David, you mentioned Theo Epstein. He did pretty good in Boston before he was ever a general manager, right? That was a young guy they brought in. So here's some optimism for you. I will say this, that the biggest failure of Ryan Pace was the swing and a miss on Mitch Trubisky. Right, that basically set them back for a few years because they built a really good defense, and then the offense never turned into what we thought Matt Nagy could build it into. And a part of that was Mitch Trubisky, a part of that was Matt Nagy's failures. And I agree, David. We don't know yet if Justin Fields is the real deal, but don't just feel a lot better about where Justin Fields at is even through the same amount of games as Mitch Trubisky. We don't have to look at the stats because there are a lot of things that went wrong. But Ryan Poles comes in with Justin Fields. And now we don't have to necessarily cross our fingers which is kind of crazy to think, right? That Ryan Pace, the guy who might have drafted the Bears' first ever legitimate franchise quarterback, was fired less than a year after making that pick. Like in 5 years, Justin Fields could be a stud. It would be like, who drafted him? Oh, that's right. It was Ryan Pace. And then he got fired.
Yeah, but Kevin,
I'm going optimistic angle here. Ryan Poles' next big move doesn't have to be finding a young quarterback. So that should make Bears fans feel a lot better. I'm not saying it's a sole done deal on Justin Fields, but Ryan Poles doesn't have the pressure of finding a quarterback, at least for the next couple of years. If Fields pans out, he doesn't have to worry about it for a long time.
Fingers crossed, of course, on Justin Fields. He was a really good quarterback. I liked him a lot in college, but so far in the pros, jury is out, plain and simple. He hasn't proven anything. Knock on wood, he turns out to be the real deal. I'm not giving Ryan Pace any credit for anything. He's the bozo who drafted Mitch Trubisky. He brought in Mike Glennon for $18.5 million for 4 games. You guys do the math. That guy is rich for no reason. He hired all these, brought in all these other veteran quarterbacks. I mean, you could pay off the national debt with the money that he gave to a bozo quarterbacks. So I'm not giving Ryan Pace any credit at all. Knock on wood. These two guys are the real deal that Pace and Nagy were supposed to be. But again, I'm not going to get excited until I see something positive down the road.
You think Ben Heisler, managing editor, Betside, is going to join us with the odds that the Bears hired Eberflus and Ryan Poles? Listen. Everything you just said is dead on. Ryan Pace, you didn't even mention. Listen, the dude had Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, who may go down as the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. One of those guys was 28-2. I don't even want to go back through this, but I'm doing it again. One of the guys was 28-2 and beat Alabama in the championship game. And you picked the dude who started for 1 year at North Carolina and lost in a bowl game and couldn't get past, what was it, Jermaine Williams? I can't even remember who the hell the starting quarterback was. That's what they did. So trying to be the smartest guy in the room or identifying with somebody who you feel comfortable with that's not the plan. The Bears.
I'm not defending anything Ryan Pace did. He deserved to be fired. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be kind of funny after all the failures that he did find Justin Fields? Fields works out and then he got fired. That's all I'm saying. It'd be kind of funny, wouldn't it? Ryan Pace deserved to go. There's no question about that. And I'm just saying, just because it's the same blueprint as last time, first head coach, first general manager, doesn't mean it's not going to work out. But there's definitely reason to not feel great about it, as David has pointed out.
Party continues. Managing editor Ben Heisler, longtime Bears fan, sitting in Kansas City now, but has his Bears jacket on. Heisler, the Heis, reactions, thoughts? Are you excited?
You know what? I am excited in the sense that if it were Caldwell or if it were Dan Quinn, to me, and I agree with you, Carman, in this sense, those would have reeked of management getting in the way. Let's go get the the head coach who's been around before. Let's pair up the way that Fox and Ryan Pace had this arranged marriage that neither one of them really wanted to be a part of. To me, Eberflus is a swing from Ryan Poles. And if we're set to believe that somebody with, he's a younger candidate, 36, 37 years old, but went through a wide variety of experiences and different sets of people running the show throughout his time in Kansas City. And every indication that says that he is ready for this challenge and he is meticulously organized and has his experience through scouting and the draft and worked with wide varieties of other parts of the organization. If this is his hire, then that to me is a celebration. Now, none of us have any idea if it's going to work out or not. We don't know if Eberflus is going to come in and change up the culture or if he's going to be someone who's adaptable. My concern is, and I spoke to somebody who's close with the Colts organization over the last several years. They said from a culture standpoint, he's very good and he will have the players playing hard and he'll be very detail oriented. And that part, especially some of the mistakes that you saw in the Nagy era, the stupid mistakes like even George McCaskey brought up of, a guy goes down, you don't touch him and he goes and runs for a touchdown. That's not going to happen under Eberflus. The problem that was told to me is that from an adaptation standpoint, there are some concerns that there weren't a lot of adjustments made. And so if he comes in saying, this is the offense and this is the defense that we're going to run because this is my offense, and this is my defense, and I'm the head coach, he has that right. But I would want to see somebody come in and work with the talent that he has to maximize their abilities, because ultimately that's what cost Nagy his job. He was trying to run the Chiefs offense with this brilliant vision of Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek Hill running the show. We had Mitchell Trubisky and Allen Robinson and David Montgomery in a bad offensive line. You can't put the square peg in the round hole. That's what I have my biggest concern about with Eberflus, but I'm glad that at least it was a Poles hire.
Hey guys, can I add one thing here real quickly?
Please.
And again, I keep having my fingers crossed that these two guys. I want to see the Bears win. It's better for everybody, okay? But I am a little bit of as you know, Mark. You know I'm a cynic. What was the most important game as defensive coordinator was Eberflus in charge of at the end of the season? Which game?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben. Underline it.
Well, it's a bad look. It's a terrible look considering that you have one of your worst performances of the year against Jacksonville. The Colts, for whatever reason, haven't been able to beat Jacksonville in Jacksonville since 2014. That's an absolute problem, and I hope that is something that is brought up and he answers it as transparently as possible in that press conference. So Carson Wentz was really bad in that game too, and they made a lot of fixes to him over the course of the season. For I think the first 12, 13 weeks, David, he was leading the NFL in turnover ratio before Aaron Rodgers eventually surpassed him because he's Aaron freaking Rodgers. So yeah, it's a bad look for the Colts, but throughout collectively over the course of the season, that was a good defense.
Yes, it was. It was. I just want to add this real quickly. I mean,
go for it. I have a great point though.
A reason there's deja vu in my head. Matt Nagy's last game as the offensive coordinator at Kansas City, he leaked the bed, if you will, in that playoff game in the second half. So things like that, they're just too easy to jump on. I'm sorry.
Yep, they had the 21-3 lead and lost to the Titans 22-21, and Ed O'Bradovich, who I do the Bears Racers, was screaming on day one, how did they lose to Tennessee? That was my first question. I mean, he wanted the guy out of here before he got here, and then he was, and it ended up being proven right. Listen, we got to give. I'm not here to not give the guy at least some benefit of the doubt. And one of the things Heisler that the Tribune at least is writing is that Eberflus is good at adapting to the talent that he has, which I don't understand how you could hire anybody who doesn't like that. That is coaching 101. John Harbaugh, you all of a sudden you have Lamar Jackson, you make your offense work around him. You don't make him play Joe Flacco style offense. This is basic stuff. You should be able to. I mean, you're a coach. You figure out what people can do, and you let them do it. So hopefully he can do that, but that doesn't necessarily excite me. Go ahead, Shu.
And Mark, I was going to say this. I mean, two really important things. I mean, they got to get the best offensive coordinator that's available. I don't know who that is. I have no idea. Just get him. I mean, because that to me is almost more important than anything else. Talking about Justin Fields, like Kevin has said here, and also I'm going to be curious. I think this guy basically has run a 4-3 defense. And, the Bears used to be 4-3 for years and years and years. Then they've gone to 3-4. So I'm going to be curious to see what kind of defense they now have going forward.
That's my question too, David, is how much is he the head coach? Because Matt Nagy, right, he was the head coach, but for a while served as offensive coordinator, right? He was kind of doing both. That was a colossal failure. So is Eberflus coming in here thinking he has a major hand at the defensive side of the ball, or is he just simply a head coach who lets his assistants do the rest? Sean Desai sticking around? And again, the offensive coordinator is a massive hire here because you have to build that offense around Justin Fields. So I'm curious to see how much Eberflus thinks he's going to how much of a part he is in the defensive side of the ball, or if he's just the head coach and let your assistants do the thing.
To your point on Desai, I mean, I thought he did a fine job, but I got to be honest, I'm a little turned on by the Dan Pompei Athletic article about Mike Singletary, who was literally begging the Bears to come back. And he interviewed to be the defensive coordinator last year. He was willing to be a lame duck with Nagy. They're like, no, we're going Desai. And that guy, I would think, could be a home run defensive coordinator hire if they're comfortable with him. Singletary had got a really rough ride in San Francisco, but he's Mike Damn Singletary. He's got a huge pride in the organization. I refuse to believe that he doesn't know what he's doing. I liked, if you read Pompei's article, I don't know if anybody else has read it, but it turned me on at least. Hill, what do you think the national perspective is right now on what the Bears are doing? Do you think anyone out there is shaking in their boots when you look around the NFL landscape? You cover it better than anyone.
No, I mean, I don't think anybody's shaking in there. I think everybody's kind of just like, all right, they got their head coach. Like, that's a vacancy that's been filled. I don't think that it excites anybody. I don't think it also strikes the fear in anybody. The point was made that we don't know what's happening with Aaron Rodgers. And then if indeed this job was chosen over the Vikings job, that says that the Vikings aren't going in the right direction. You don't have to be a genius to see that they don't have a good team right there because Kirk Cousins is still their quarterback. And then the Lions are the Lions. So the NFC North is a very winnable division. And it's also in a weird transitional period where maybe if the Bears do try to do this the right way, and Eberflus does go out and build his staff, because that's the next step here. When we talked about the guy's got connections, he's been around for years, it's building that staff. And that's how you do it. That's sneakily how you become the team of the NFC North. You go out and find the right offensive coordinator. You go out and find that right defensive guy who can come in and either install what you want to install or take that Lamar Jackson route and say, these are the pieces that we have. How can we make this work? But from the national perspective, I mean, it's going to be – the Bears would have to do something significant to change anybody's mind because they're not going to go to the playoffs next year with what they have, it looks like. And if they get there, are they going to beat the Rams? Are they going to beat the Packers if Aaron Rodgers comes back? If Brady comes back to Tampa, are they going to beat the Bucs? I mean, the answer is no. This is a rebuild, and I think that that's the next phase of this. Are the Bears going to rebuild, or are they going to try to force what they have and make it work now? That's the tough part. And also, you're the Bears.
Interesting
you don't
question.
have a long clock to work. Like, you want success right away. This is Chicago. You don't lose in Chicago. You have success in Chicago.
Here's the question for you, because I saw a tweet. I think it was Pelissero tweeted that Dan Quinn informed teams he was returning to Dallas. And I read that. I was like, does that mean even if he was, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, maybe you have more insight on it, but did that mean that Quinn might have been, I guess what I'm saying, did Dan Quinn just tell the Bears he didn't want to be their head coach and I'm going back to Dallas?
No. No.
I mean,
no. Kevin, if he's offered the job, he takes it in a half a second. By him saying, I'm going back to Dallas, he basically said I was the runner-up or the third runner-up or whatever. That's why he puts that out there. And there's still a lot of job openings in the NFL. If one of those other teams contacts him, he takes that job in a second. You're not going back to be the second banana if you can be the top banana.
I think Shoe's got this one right, because I know that for a fact that his agent was watching different people on TV in this town get on there and say, yes, good things to Dan Quinn. And his agent was like, thank you for saying that. So I'm pretty certain that his agent wanted him to get the gig, and that means that Dan wanted the gig and Dan didn't get the gig. So I think that adds up. Gentlemen, I so appreciate you all jumping in here. Hill from the start, KP, Shoe, Benny Heiss, you're all fantastic, and I look forward to having everybody on here often with the DeWindy YouTube and trying to grow this thing to the moon. A la the Schuster Express, baby. Check out everything that David's doing over there. Ben over at BetSided, KPWGN, Josh Hill dominating FanSided like he always does, a zillion million posts a month, clicks a month. God bless you all. So, hey, the Bears did it. They hired a GM, they hired a coach, and it feels similar, but hopefully it'll be a whole lot different. Let's end it like that. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you all. And thanks for checking out. When you hit that subscribe button, and we'll